So I'm Kip Knippel, President and CEO of KIP Search, an executive level retained recruiting firm. We help companies find executive leaders, typically C-level, and we are focused on you and your business, your culture, your core values, and finding people that will help you catapult your business to the next level, whatever that means for you, but that really fit your culture and core values. And we just want to help you create abundance and impact and do good in the world through business, through entrepreneurship, through the free market.
Today on Liberty Spenders, we're pleased to be joined by Kip Knippel. He's the president and CEO of KIP Search, a boutique executive search firm that specializes in connecting companies with top leadership, talent, and providing executive coaching and development. Kip started his career as a lawyer. He was recognized as a Minnesota Super Lawyers Rising Star and even ran for the state Senate. That harkens back to Prosper Group political campaigns. His diverse background in law, commercial real estate, and recruiting gives him a unique perspective on leadership and business growth. He's known for his hands-on quarterback style, really partnering with clients and focusing on authenticity and long-term success outside of work. Kip is a passionate triathlete marathon runner. You also coach youth sports.
Indeed.
And has his own podcast. You're a busy guy.
Yes, indeed.
We're going to get into the triathlon thing. You know, I was the world's worst cross-country runner in high school. I think there's something mental, like, you know, running cross-country is more mental than it is physical, and I sucked at it. I was the guy running every moment thinking, I am about to die, right? I just couldn't get past. So triathlon has to be similar.
Indeed, it is. It's definitely mental.
Well, we'll talk about that, but I want to start because I think it's really cool, the unique approach you take to search. You know, when you tell people, hey, we're going to talk to a search firm for employees here, some people might tune out, but we know how important it is for business. And you, of course, started out as a lawyer, so there's got to be a real passion here that brought you to KIP Search. So how did it come to be, and what makes your approach to executive search so different and unique compared to how other people might do it?
Yeah, well, thanks, Kurt. And it's a pleasure to be on the show and excited to hopefully add some value here to the audience. So KIP Search, we are really a C-level executive headhunting recruiting firm. So our clients range from public companies, private equity-backed companies, venture capital-backed companies, or family offices in their portfolio companies. So it really runs the gamut in how the organizations are organized. And really, we're industry agnostic. But the common thread is C-level executive leadership. So CEOs, presidents, chief financial officers, chief technology officers, you know, heads of AI or marketing or sales, kind of all the different disciplines, but all leadership roles. And all around the country. Our team is spread around the country. Our clients are all around the country. And we're what's known as a retained executive recruiting firm, which means our clients hire us exclusively. We're 100% devoted and committed to them. And as a result, we have 100% success on every search we've ever done, which means every time a client's engaged us to do a search, we've successfully placed someone there and for the long term. Whereas I think the industry average is like 40% success rate. So we're just very process-driven, really focused on our clients' culture, their core values. And, you know, with Liberty Spenders as an example, we've done lots of searches for organizations that are, you know, strongly, you know, your viewer base here. I mean, strong Christians, Catholics, Republicans, you know, conservative in this way or that, and which creates a unique element in search in that, you know, in this day and age, you have to be careful how you talk to people and what you say, but like, the cultures of these clients are very much that. And so you have to make sure you have someone that's, you know, as an example, on fire for Christ to be at work at that organization, not someone that's just like, well, yeah, that's okay. You know, it doesn't bother me. I mean, that would not be a fit for that type of an organization. So we're just very focused on really understanding our clients so that we can deliver the right kind of people that fit in their culture and core values, and then can also deliver amazing results for the companies.
Yeah. That 100% number is exceptional. Now, you've been doing this more than 3 weeks, right? So
Yep.
you're talking dozens and dozens of searches, maybe hundreds by now. To have 100% is insane. You said the industry average is 40. I'm surprised it's even 40. If you would have said it was 10%, I wouldn't have been shocked, considering my own experience with some search firms. And so that's pretty shocking, 100%.
And it's really, we say no. If there's a client that really we're not the right fit for them and what they're looking for, we'll say no. Or if we just have too much on our plate at a given time, we'll say no. Or we'll say, we can't today, but in 3 weeks we can kick that off. Because by saying yes to one search means we're saying no to other searches so we can successfully complete what we're working on. Whereas a lot of firms just say yes to everything and it's a volume game, and ours is just very much brand and reputation, making sure we deliver for our clients every single time, which means saying no until the time is right, or if we're not the right type of firm for what they're looking for.
Yeah. In 2021, when so many employees were leaving post-COVID, and they had that year was the year of the Great Resignation. Right? That's, we had our own high volume of people who were kind of moving around. And that was the first year I had any real extensive experience with search firms. And, we were desperately trying to source candidates. We're a unique company. You talked about culture. We worked for Republican political candidates at the time exclusively. Plus, we're digital marketing. Plus we have a unique experience in online fundraising / crowdfunding. So we're really looking for a pretty unique candidate who understands these things, and you got to be willing to work in politics. So I knew it was difficult. We're having a hard time. So we go out to these search firms, and everybody I talked to, it was like the conversation was identical. I think if the same guy was the salesperson for every search firm I talked to, they were all going to work on contingency. And they all had candidates. Oh, I have 5 candidates right now I could put in front of you, immediately. And we'll have this thing filled in 30 days. I'm confident. We fill everything in 30 days. And so I hired a couple of these contingency firms, got nothing, literally nothing. The guy who was the most confident never returned my calls. We signed our commission thing. He was, quote, off to the races. And it was always like, hey, we'll find somebody. And finally stopped returning my calls. At one point, I had 9 search firms on contingency working simultaneously. It was an interesting exercise. Only 2 of them ever presented candidates. One was a company out of Chicago that specialized in digital marketing. So I think they really seemed to get it. The other one was a one-man shop who was local here, who said, hey, I only take on, 2 clients at a time. I'm pseudo-retired, and this seems kind of fun. And so your experience about retained search versus contingency, I think what you were saying there is super important for people who've not hired before. What I learned during that process was these contingency firms will take on literally everybody. You mentioned that. Most of these, anybody comes their way, we've got you. And then it becomes what's the easiest position to fill?
Yep.
And they fill those, and if your position isn't easy, they just forget you exist, right? Because they're making more money filling the positions that are easy, even at a smaller percentage, even if they're not, even at a smaller success fee.
Sure.
And so I think the retain versus contingency is key, just all in of itself, I guess, is the point, considering my own personal experience.
Yeah, you illustrated it perfectly. That is when we encounter people or companies that haven't used search before and trying to explain the difference. There's no, and it goes both ways. With contingent, there is no commitment. The client company is not committing to the search firm. You hired 9. And vice versa. They have no commitment to you other than unless they deliver somebody. So usually what happens is they'll work hard for 2 weeks if they're good. And then if nothing happens, they just stop. Or they just don't even work hard at all and they're just doing easier searches. But it's just a totally different world. I just could never do that. Like and people on our team could never do that. It's just not the way we're wired. And I'd be miserable working on things like that.
Yeah. Well, and that's probably led to the way you used, when we were learning more about you, used this quarterback analogy. And, I know you're into sports, right? So you probably just love sports metaphors. But what does that mean on a search? If I'm hiring you and you're saying I'm your quarterback, what's that really mean?
Yeah. I mean, so again, with the retain model, and we're committed to each other, I mean, we can, our process is rigorous for our clients and for the candidates. We really spend a lot of time with the client, getting to know them. And then, I mean, another way to put the quarterback thing is just being a trusted advisor. I mean, that's the kind of thing that our clients can reach out to me or our team about anything. I mean, the specific search we're working on, or anything we can do to add value as they're evaluating talent, thinking about succession planning within their organization, really anything. I mean, even just making connections to, lawyers or accountants or investment bankers or PE or VC or family offices. I mean, we just want to be their go-to trusted advisor to help them on the work that we do and anything else we can do to add value. And if we don't do it, whatever it is, we can find someone that does what they need and really try to make those connections for people. And just like you would for family and friends, you just want to add value any way you can. And, if you don't know the answer, you can find the answer for them or find the person that knows the answer. We just always want to be able to do that for our clients.
What are some of the common mistakes you see companies make when they start on a search for a top executive talent?
One would be, especially with higher level roles, trying to do contingent. I mean, you can't hire your next CEO on a contingent basis or CFO or something that's so critical. If you need to have the right person in the driver's seat to help your organization grow, I mean, you obviously want to commit to that and make sure you take the time to make sure you have a rigorous process to find the right person. So, I mean, that would be number one, to go the retain route, or even for these key critical roles, to try to do it yourself. I mean, you're running your business, and hire an expert, just like you would a lawyer or an accountant or somebody else. Hire an expert in search who's spending all day, every day, looking for your next president or CFO, not you kind of working your network on the side and, hiring a relative or a friend of a friend for a key critical role within your organization. It's different if it's a lower level or entry level but for key critical roles, even if you know someone that could be a good fit, you want to be able to vet them against the market just to confirm, yes, this truly is the best person. So that's another one, trying to go it yourself. It's like someone trying to do, work on their house that has like me, it has no skills to pick up a hammer and then you just screw things up, and you got to go back and hire an expert to come in and fix the plumbing mistakes you just made as your basement's flooding. And then you want to have reasonable expectations too. I mean, based on who your company is in the market, what level of person can you reasonably expect to be attracted to your company? And you have to be reasonable and have your eyes open on compensation too. I mean, you can't get a candidate that commands $500,000 a year for $100,000. Like that's unrealistic. So you want to be realistic about who's going to be attracted to you. I mean, it's just like when you're dating or, trying to find your spouse. I mean, you have to be your best self first before you go out and try to find someone you want to be the person that you want to be attracted to. You have to do that first. And again, we try to be the extension of our client's brand and really tell their story in the market. And we're never really trying to sell anybody on a role. We're just giving them enough information to take the next step and the next step and the next step. But part of that is just honesty and transparency and really telling our client's story in a real way. We're not trying to trick anybody. So the client needs to be, and the owner of the company has to be realistic in who they are. And it's okay if you're in a certain spot, but you're trying to transform the business, and that's part of this search, and you want to take things to a different level, or you're trying to transform the culture. You just want to be open and honest about it and tell a true, compelling, but authentic, honest story to attract the right kind of people.
If you're listening to this show, it's probably because you understand something most people don't. Marketing to Liberty Spenders isn't just about ads or tactics, it's about trust. And in the real world, trust moves through relationships. And that's why private introductions and deal flow are such a core part of what we do.
So FastPass is a private introduction and deal flow network for Christian and conservative leaders who already have influence and want to scale fast. It's not open networking, it's intentional introductions between people who already share alignment. We've seen one client land a $25,000 opportunity from a single introduction. Another told us that FastPass has become his largest source of referrals, not because of volume, but because of fit. And yet another closed her equity round at a key moment just due to the right introduction.
When you book a one-to-one consult with us, we're not handing you a list or making big promises. Instead, we're having a real conversation about what you're building, who you want to meet, and whether FastPass makes sense for this season for you. So no pressure, no hustle, and no awkward pitch from us.
Yeah. If you're ready to grow through relationships instead of forcing everything on your own, head to libertyspenders.com/FastPass and book a one-to-one consult with us.
In worst case, you leave with clarity. Best case, the right introductions change the trajectory of what you're building.
Okay, back to the episode.
I've heard it said, and I think people probably get this at some level, right? When people are interviewing to work for you, but they're also interviewing you, right? So you have to make them want to work for you, present like you said, a compelling story. What makes this place such an awesome place to work? What makes this job interesting and powerful? So, having that approach has got to be so essential to making sure you have a successful search.
For sure. And the culture fit is so important too. You have to find someone that really fits into your culture. There might be a rock star salesperson as an example, but if they don't fit your culture, number one, they're going to hurt your culture and probably leave, and they're probably going to make other people leave too.
Yeah.
You can't, force a square peg in a round hole, especially as it relates to culture. They really have to, be culture fits, core value fits, personality fits for who they're going to work with. And if your values are not aligned, if you're a strong, conservative Republican organization, you're talking about politics in that way in the office, and someone's far to the left, even though they might be a great person, you might really like them, they might do a good job, but like that person is not going to be happy in your culture, and they're probably going to, turn it if there's going to be culture, drag away from how it is now. So you just got to be really, really careful, especially when you have really strong core values or, religious values or political values or whatever it is. You really need to hire people based on your core values, promote and honor people based on your core values, and fire people based on your core values. That really needs to be the core of how you run your operation, especially as it relates to recruiting.
Absolutely. Well, now I want to get to this other thing I was super curious about. So you started your career journey being a lawyer, right? So How did you go from, okay, I'm going to practice law, to now I'm going to be an executive search? How did that journey, what attracted you to law? What changed? How'd you get here?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I grew up, my dad was a lawyer, and it's so funny. I'm very conservative Republican. I would just say a strong conservative, and my dad is so liberal. He's a trial lawyer. Just all the things that you would think of that, but like the greatest person on earth, the most friendly, kind, empathetic, just an awesome person. But I just always knew I wanted to go to law school after college, and did, and then took some of the classes called torts, which is what he does. And every one of these cases we're reading, I'm like, I don't believe this. I totally disagree with this. And then I started to take some business classes, some real estate classes. I'm like, yes, this is what I like. And I had worked in his firm, in the summer, clerking, and then had clerked in some other firms doing business and transactional law. And I just knew I wanted to work with people that I did not want to work with people that, even though there's a place for this, that just felt like they're victims and they want to get retribution and pay people back. I wanted to work with people that were builders and creators and like creating jobs and starting business and, inventing things and just putting positive, capitalist free market things into the world. And then so pursued that. And then I was a corporate mergers and acquisitions. and commercial real estate transactional lawyer. So buying and selling companies, buying and selling real estate, and really enjoyed it, really did. But, I really liked putting the deals together. And I like doing business development and bringing in clients. But I didn't really get to put a lot of deals together. And so I went to, a bunch of different mentors, including our managing partner at the law firm, the head of our corporate M&A practice, the head of our real estate practice. And they basically said the same thing. I've been practicing for 25 years or 30 years. And every once in a while we get to put the deal together. But as lawyers, our clients come to us, to solve problems as we're heading to closings, to paper the deal, but we're not really putting the deal together. So again, I talked to a bunch of different mentors and ended up going to CB Richard Ellis, which is a big commercial real estate company, as a broker. And so with that, I did corporate real estate. So I represented companies doing their real estate. So buying and selling buildings, if they owned it for their own operation, not to be a landlord, not to be an investor, but to actually run their own operation, or a more common, negotiating leases. So a lot of represented a lot of law firms and other professional services firms and tech companies and manufacturing companies. So a lot of negotiating leases, buying and selling buildings for them, and really enjoyed it a lot. And then met some people in the executive search business really to refer business back and forth, because my clients primarily were the owners of the companies, the CEO, CFO, if they're a little bit bigger. And that's who I was dealing with doing real estate. And that was the same people that these executive search firms were dealing with. So, referred business back and forth. And then one group recruited me for about a year to come join them. And then I finally did. And then just turned around to my real estate clients, and instead of doing real estate, started doing executive search locally and around the country. Loved it. And then kind of wised up and launched my own firm, and we've grown it from there. But what really changed was those conversations in the beginning with the same exact people that I was doing real estate with were totally different. Once it was executive search, it was much more personal, much less stiff. People opened up. They were their real selves. Just a much more personal conversation. And frankly, people were a lot nicer. I mean, I think they thought in the back of their head, I'm going to be nice to Kip because he might be able to help me find my next CEO role or president role or CFO role. And so just personality-wise, it was just a much better fit. Even though I really liked working at CBRE and doing real estate, it was just a much better fit. And I felt like I was impacting people on a much more personal level. I mean, we're helping companies find great leaders to help grow and scale their business. But then on the personal side, with the candidates, you're helping them advance in their career. You're impacting their family, their happiness, their fulfillment in their job and life. And it just felt very, very rewarding. And again, once I kind of wised up, I launched my own firm, and then we've added more people that are all around the country and have scaled it up. And we're just having a lot of fun. And we all just really love what we do. We always talk about, we talk about the Simon Sinek, your why. We just talk about helping organizations and individuals achieve abundance and impact. And that's how we think about it in the work that we do. While companies are really our clients, we think of the candidates and the executives just as much as clients. And really just trying to bring great people together into great organizations. And again, just embrace this great capitalist free market society that we're so blessed to live in here in the United States.
Yeah. Well, that's such a good caveat, because somewhere in here you also said, I'm going to run for state senate. So that makes you a man after my own heart. We've done political campaigns for almost 20 years now. I often tell people when they say, should you run for office? My reflexive answer always is no, because it is both the most awesome thing you'll ever do in your life and also the worst thing you'll ever do in your life. So you really gotta want it. So how did you enjoy running for state senate? What was that like? Yeah,
that's a great question. So how that came to be, so my wife, then my girlfriend, fiance, worked for Michelle Bachmann when she was in the Minnesota State Senate. My wife was the girlfriend was her legislative aide. So I've got to know Michelle and her family really well. And I just came in, I was in law school at the time, and I just came into the state Senate to pick up my wife. Again, my girlfriend then, I just started talking to Michelle about how frustrated I was with what was going on in Minnesota and just all these different issues. And she's like, Kip, you should run. And it was a redistricting year. So there was, and they had redistricted the district that I lived in. So there was no incumbent. And she's like, you should run. I'm like, yeah, I don't know, Michelle. She goes, if you run, I, Michelle Bachman, will teach you how to run a campaign. So we kind of thought about it and came back and said, okay. And then again, my girlfriend, then fiance at that point, was my campaign manager. Michelle taught us how to run a campaign. So I was in my last semester of law school. So I was finishing law school, studied for and took the bar exam, all while running the campaign. And it was so much fun. It's like you said, it was grueling, but it was a ton of fun. I mean, tons of tactics and strategies. And I mean, I door knocked every single house in the district, and took, had a dictaphone and took notes to everyone I talked to, and then we wrote, and then every night I'd spend writing out like hundreds of not index cards, but like postcards, specific to the person. And then right before the election, we mailed them all out. So they got, it was just all sorts of things. And in the end, I lost, but so I ran as a Republican in a heavy Democratic district. And there was a partial incumbent. There was a woman in the state house that was running for re-election, but now running for the Senate. So she already represented half the district. And there were about 10 things that had to happen for me to win. And 9 of them really did. But the 10th was, there was a Democrat that ran against this woman for the Democratic endorsement and lost. And he was really angry. So he ran as a Green candidate against her, and he just had to take enough votes from her, more than a normal Green candidate does. Otherwise, there was just no way I could win. In the end, he got the endorsement from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, our local newspaper, the Pioneer Press, which is the St. Paul newspaper, endorsed. He had signs everywhere. He came to all the debates and just went after her. And it all looked like he was going to take more than a Green candidate normally does. But in the end, I think he took like 2% or 1 point whatever, and did what they normally do. But I think I'm trying to remember, it's a while back, it was 2002. I think out of 67,000 votes, I lost by 2,000, something like that. Again, don't quote me exactly on those numbers because it was a while back, but it was close. But again, we just had to do that. And, it was probably for the best that I lost. But had I won, I would have been the youngest Minnesota state senator ever.
Yeah.
But it was so much fun. I got to meet so many people and hear people's stories, and, was, a young 20-something with just nothing but, everything all the energy I had in the law firm I was working at, had people in the state Senate in the past. So they really let me spend as much time as I needed running the campaign. I really supported that too. So that was super helpful.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad it was such a good experience. I have every once in a while thought, I've run campaigns, I've worked at the highest levels, and a few years ago, my state legislative seat became open, and I thought for about 24 hours about running, and then I thought, well, what the worst thing that could happen would be that I would actually win, right? Because I'd have to go and serve in the General Assembly, which would probably drive me crazy, right? To sit and do almost nothing about, 80% of the year just to, finalize. I just want to show up on the last day, which is when everything gets voted on and get it done, right? And I'd probably say a bunch of stuff about how crazy and efficient this was. And so I ultimately decided not to, thankfully, because I thought I'd enjoy campaigning. I could do the door-to-door thing. I could, I'd love meeting voters. But actually having to go downtown and deal with the state legislature, I thought, no way. And I could only imagine what it'd be like in Minnesota, right? At least in Indiana, we have a pretty reasonable state legislature, run by Republicans, let alone a bunch of crazy Minnesota Democrats you have to deal with who are currently, at the time of this recording, leading riots against ICE agents and law enforcement in Minnesota right now. It
was craziness. Like back then when I ran, it was like it was right before like the Tea Party movement. Like there was this resurgence of like Republicans, including in Minnesota. But again, I think it's a lost cause now here.
Well, it's all Bush midterm. He did pretty well in 2002, right? He's one of the exceptions, right? Because most of the time you lose, the incumbent loses a bunch of seats, and he did not. In part, I think, we were still dealing with the afterglow of 9/11, right? And some of the unity and some of the popularity that Bush had from the way he handled that. And that also feels like a gajillion years ago.
I know. It's unbelievable.
I graduated from college in 2001, so I still hadn't started my career. I was running actually, now I think about it, 2002, I ran a state Senate campaign that lost in Indiana. The great Brenda Jackson, great lady. She would have made a great state senator. So you've done law, you've run for office, you've got your own search firm now, and then this came up in the introduction. A triathlete marathon runner. So I want to get into that a little bit.
Sure.
I referenced it earlier because I think of what the mental strength required to do a sport like that, right? To be able to be basically alone, on your own, running, biking, swimming, right? That's all in your head. As you train for that, as you get into it, what are the lessons you've learned to help be a good triathlete in this kind of tough environment of having to do an endurance sport like that?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. And by way of background, so I grew up playing football, basketball, and baseball through high school, and then played football and ran track in college. And I'm built like a football player, so I'm not built like your traditional triathlete. And when I did track in college, it was all the sprints. So like the 100, the 200, the 4x1, 4x2. So it was like my whole life was like short distances fast. Like that was, so it was a big shift. And it was actually like in the dead of winter here in Minnesota. I was at Lifetime Fitness, which is where I work out, and just went to one of the trainers and said, I've been doing the same thing for a long time. I just want to do something different. And so I worked with the trainer once a month for like 4 months. But part of it is they had me do this test, this VO2 max test, where they put a mask on you and have you run on a treadmill and crank up the incline. And then it gives your VO2, but then it cranks out like 6 weeks of cardio training to do on again, in the dead of winter on the treadmill with all the your different zones. And I couldn't run 3 miles without stopping like ever up until that point. So I started doing that, did the 6 weeks, took the test again, did another 6 weeks. And then by then I was running outside and I was running 3 miles pretty consistently, and then 6, and then 9. And I just went out one day to run 9 miles and ended up running 15 and just felt great. And I was like, I'm just going to try to do a marathon. And so I signed up for Grandma's Marathon, which is in Duluth, Minnesota, kind of up north on the Lake Superior, just a beautiful run, and did the race. And again, I'm not fast, I'm not winning marathons, but I just wanted to do it. And loved it, and then immediately signed up for the Twin Cities Marathon, which is in the fall, and did that. And then the next year, I did Twin Cities again. But then I thought, let's try triathlon. So I did some sprint triathlons, sprint distance, and then Olympics, and then really got addicted to it and was doing maybe 8-ish triathlons a summer in Minnesota until COVID hit and all the lockdown stuff happened. But it just, like, the running community is so positive. While you're doing it by yourself, you're just surrounded by people that are super positive. And then then starting to do the triathlons, it's even more. It's a group of just like so positive, such encouraging group of people. And you get addicted to it, and you get addicted to those people and training together and racing together. Yeah, so much fun. And then when you ask about just the mental toughness, I got majorly into like Ironman triathlons. I have not done Ironman. I just do Olympic distance, but just like watching the Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii, and then reading all the books of like the great Ironman champions. And then, Craig Alexander and Chris McCormack were 2 Australian guys I really got to like. And Chris McCormack talked about embracing the suck. So I ended up getting this bracelet that I wore that said "Embrace the Suck." And he said, at least once during a race, you're going to feel terrible, just awful. But like his mantra of embrace the suck was, you can feel it coming on. You just know it's coming. And then you just think mentally, embrace the suck. I know this is going to suck, but then it's going to pass. And it's totally true, whether you're running a marathon or a half marathon or doing a triathlon, there will be a point where you just feel awful. But if you can just like mentally separate from that and just like, I'm embracing the suck, I'm just going to lean into it. It will pass. It's not going to last forever. And there's just so many good lessons in life that come from endurance training. You don't have to be the fastest. Just keep going. Just don't stop. If you're, in fact, my first triathlon ever, I was supposed to do an Olympic distance one. It was the Minneapolis Triathlon. And I ended up having rotator cuff surgery before the race. So all I could do was doggy paddle. But I was signed up to do an Olympic distance. So the swim was like 0.9 miles. And so I was ready to doggy paddle that long. And we ended up having crazy weather here, and like the bike course was underwater. So they canceled the Olympic distance. And so everyone had to do the sprint distance, which is like a 0.4 mile swim. And basically it was out. So there was like floating cones. It was out around the cones and back. So I doggy paddled that. Plus it's storming and there's waves. And like, as people were going around the cones and coming back, the waves were pushing them back. So people are swimming into each other. And then there's lifeguards along, and every lifeguard I come up to, they're like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" To me, I'm like, "Yep, I had rotator cuff surgery." As I'm doggy paddling, and the next one, "Are you okay? You okay?" Like, "Yeah, I had rotator cuff surgery." And so, and that was my first try, after having, and then, it's just, I don't know, it's just such a positive group of people and so addicting. And, it's so funny. I did a triathlon with my wife many years later, the Maple Grove Triathlon in Minnesota. And I've never seen this happen. So I stayed with her the whole race. So we swam next to each other and biked and ran. But they had a special group that went out of like first timers. So it was like at the very end, so you wouldn't get clogged up with other people. But we're going out in the swim, and some guy absolutely freaked out before we even got to the first like cone. And my wife's about to stop. I'm like, just keep going. You can't, he'll pull you under. So we just kept going. So she saw someone freak out on the swim. We did the swim, and then we're on the bike, and it was maybe the first turn on the bike. And there's a woman up ahead that like fell over into the grass and was like freaking out. Like we saw it happen. She gently just tipped over into the grass, but she acted like she had broken every bone in her body. And so then my wife saw someone freak out on the bike, and then we're on the run on the very home stretch. And some guy really kind of lost it, was laying in the front yard because it was through a neighborhood. And he was ghostly white, laying on his back, and the paramedics were there. So I've never seen that ever in a race. But my wife, like in each 3 stages of the race, she saw someone totally incapacitated and freaking out. I'm like, this is not normal. Needless to say, she has not done another one since, but I think she probably will at some point. But it's entertaining too. It's fun. I mean, sometimes you'll run with people and talk with them. And my father-in-law is an Ironman triathlete. He's done a bunch of Ironman, and he has done Kona, the Ironman World Championship. And it's just, there's just so many good life lessons to doing triathlon or any sort of endurance training. And part of it is just, like I said, just keep going. Don't stop. Keep moving forward. Embrace the suck. And you feel them, even if you are dying throughout the race, as soon as you cross that finish line, you feel amazing and just euphoric, and you want to do it again. It's crazy. It's almost like you're just chasing abuse for your body at some point.
Yeah.
But it becomes addicting.
Yeah. I have thought some about encouraging my kids to run for the reason to build some mental toughness, to be able to tell your body, I've made a decision. I'm going to finish this race.
Right.
We're going to do it no matter what. I'm not going to listen, because when I ran, I had the worst, mental talk. I was one of those guys I remember once, one of my final races, which is still my fastest time in a 5K. I ran 19 minutes on the dot.
Nice.
And it was the regional championships, and I don't know what it was. I got started, and I just wasn't paying attention to anything. I was just running, and I had done a 5.5 split, I think, on my first mile.
Wow,
which would have been, far faster than I've ever gone, right? And I remember the moment I heard my split time, right? I was just running with the crowd.
yes,
Right? Boom. Wait a second. I'm not a 5.5 minute. I've never done 5.5 minutes when I was only running a mile, let alone in a cross country race. I spent the rest of the race acting like I could barely finish, right? I went from sort of up with the sort of, at least the, probably first third of the runners to finishing, in the back and getting passed by people, and it was all because in my head, I'm like, oh, I can't, I'm not a 5.5 minute, I'm dying, and it always seemed like some of the best runners were the ones who clearly were fighting through the mental thing. And the moment they passed over the line, absolutely, could bear the best female runner on our team, who always had the best time, always collapsed after every race. So you knew she was fighting it for 20 minutes when she was running, and then, immediately kind of, okay, I've done it. I've crossed the finish line. And so I think there's something of value in running that you might not get playing football. I mean, there's a different kind of thing you learn. You learn how to get hit and get back up again when you play football. And that's probably a lesson that I wish I would have learned a little better. But there's something also just about the mental toughness it requires to be in cross country, run distance. So it's really powerful what you're doing there. I have a lot of respect for people who do that sort of thing because I've experienced it and know it. I did a 5K a couple years ago when I was sort of running just to be healthy again. And I still laugh about it today because my only goal was to finish it. I hadn't run a 5K since high school. I finished the 5K getting passed by women who were pushing their kids in the strollers. But like that, it wasn't my goal to beat all the women in strollers. My goal was to finish it. I think I ran it like 25 minutes or something, but a great experience. I thought towards the end here, I wanted to ask if you had a chance to recommend to people a book, podcast, mentor, someone that they should be listening to, reading, that's had a major impact on you and how you run your business, who would you recommend?
Oh, great question. I'll tell you my favorite, other than the Bible, my favorite book of all time is Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. 1,000%. And back before iPads and Kindles and all that kind of stuff, I always used to carry a book around with me when I was going to meetings and you're waiting in a coffee shop, waiting for someone and you just read. But I would walk, my office is downtown Minneapolis, and I would walk down Nicollet Mall, which is you rode basically through the middle of town. And when I carried Atlas Shrugged around, and it's a big book, it's over 1,000 pages. I mean, without exaggeration, I've had 2 or 3 people a day stop me, like grab me by the arm and say, Atlas Shrugged is the greatest book I've ever read. And just over and over and over again. And it's a fictional story. But Ayn Rand, for those that don't know, grew up in communist Russia, came to the United States like in the 40s, but saw how horrible communism and socialism was, and then came to America and then saw it here and creeping in here. And I mean, basically freaked her out. So she wrote a number of books and she wrote screenplays, but Atlas Shrugged is like her masterpiece. Another one of her books is The Fountainhead, about an architect, which is another famous one that got turned into a movie. But it's a fictional story. I just can't recommend it enough. And I don't want to give away into the secrets or things that happen in the book, but I've now read it or listened to it on Audible, I think 11 times or maybe 7 times. The first time I read it, it was in law school. It took me a whole summer, 3 months to get through it. So that was the longest. And the shortest it took me to read it was 11 days. Our middle son was born and he was in the ICU in the hospital. I just stayed with him every day till he got out and just stayed with him and read Atlas Shrugged. So 11 days is my record, but that's when you're doing nothing but reading. But it's such an incredible book with so many applications to what's going on here and in America. And but Atlas Shrugged, I would highly, 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 highly recommend that.
Yeah. There's something interesting. I'm a big fan of, there's a book called The Fourth Turning that I highly recommend everyone. Also Ray Dalio writes about this a little bit. It's the idea that life kind of runs in circles or phases. Some of the same things that happened 100 years ago repeat themselves. And it's in part because generations forget the knowledge of their grandparents.
100%.
Right? And one of the biggest examples of that is our grandparents, my grandparents, were born during World War I, fought in World War II. Many of them also, my grandfather didn't, but fought in Korea and at least were definitely alive during Vietnam. And so it's not a surprise to them that we might be in a shooting war, right? Because they lived through 3 or 4 of them, and they've experienced it, and they've experienced the death firsthand. They've had friends and family die. But I grew up in a world where most of our wars were in the Middle East, overseas. Right. We're not talking about tens of thousands of people dying. We're talking about hundreds or thousands. And so the idea that we'd be in a real shooting war and we'd have a draft and, tens of thousands of Americans would be dying seems like, we're past that, right?
Right.
And so we forget the lessons. And it's the same thing as you talk about capitalism and socialism. We've experienced nothing but that, right? Our kids have experienced nothing but that. Mm-hmm. They've not seen the dangers of communism. The days when we were scared of the Soviet Union and what they could do are long past, even with Putin being who Putin is today. And so we just forget the lessons of previous generations. And, I know you have a podcast all about capitalism.
Yes.
And, the capitalist culture. And I think, and you're in Minnesota, right, which is a great example of a place where they've never experienced socialism and they've never experienced communism, but they're so desperate to have it, right?
Right.
Because they've forgotten the lessons of their grandparents.
Right.
And so we see these cycles and we almost have to have it. I saw a conservative commentator on Bill Maher's show say this. He says every 10 years or so, we need an experiment in communism for people to see how crappy it is, right?
Yeah.
So we might get to see it in New York City with Zoran Mandam, right? And we just need it. We need to see how much disaster it creates and causes. And then people are like, oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, my grandparents were saying that was a bad idea. I didn't believe them. But now I get to see it. I've lived through it, It was George Will who said it. I was like totally spacing on George Will's name. But
I just heard the other day, it might have been on a podcast, someone was talking about their grandfather talking to them and just like lessons that they learned. And their grandfather, who was, like a card-carrying communist for like years, but then became a huge conservative and capitalist. And he was telling the gentleman who was talking, his grandson, I want you to go to the library and read as many books on socialism as you can find. And in there, you'll find on every page how to divvy up the wealth and how to divvy up the money. He said, but in none of those books will you find even one page that talks about how to create the wealth.
Right.
Not one page.
Yeah.
It's the truth. It's never worked in the history of the world, ever.
Yeah. That's interesting. That I'm going to steal, right?
Yes.
Because it's totally the truth of it. My political science professor, who is a card-carrying free market guy, would say constantly, and I've always taken this to heart, he says the free market is the absolute worst form of economics except for all the alternatives.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And the free market can often be cruel and capitalism can sometimes be cronyfied, and we see that all the time. But it's the absolute best of the alternatives.
Right.
Because there's no such thing as socialism without violence.
Right.
There's no such thing as communism without dictatorial control. And that's why they call it, what do they call it? Democratic socialism. That's why Bernie Sanders there's a reason they have to say democratic before it, because there's never been a socialist government that isn't despotic, right?
That's exactly right.
Or isn't heading that way, because you can't forcibly redistribute wealth without all the weapons and power. Yeah. Well, it's been awesome, and I want to make sure we get into our lightning round. We love to ask our people the same 3 questions at the end. I always get fascinating answers. We like to start with something serious. The idea, 90 seconds times 3 questions. So we'll see if we can. What legacy do you hope to leave behind from your work at KIP Search?
Yeah, like it goes to our why. I hope that we can help organizations, companies, and individuals, the candidates, the leaders, achieve abundance and impact. I hope that, abundance, that companies can grow and create wealth and create jobs, and the candidates can, have abundance and make money and provide for their families, but then make an impact. Companies and people making an impact in the world, making an impact in business and capitalism, the free market, and then an impact in their personal lives with the people that they touch, and just really make the world a better place. I think that entrepreneurs are the best vehicle to make change in our world in a positive way by creating jobs and creating the change through business and through capitalism.
All right. Completely different. 90 seconds on any topic that's been interesting you lately. It just needs to be off topic. So it's not search related. It's not, it's not what we've talked about. Maybe it's a hobby, spiritual insight, good book, sports team you want to sing praises of. What's got you going down the rabbit hole?
Well, here's an interesting one. Through my oldest son, I got introduced to salvage denim, which, so he goes to school in Texas. It has his best friends from Arizona, and then those parents own a Western salvage denim store, in addition to all the other things they do. But if you see people wearing, it looks like old fashioned jeans, and they're rolled up at the bottom, and you can see the seam. It's this salvage denim, which is really made from one piece of denim. And so there's very little seams, and it's not parts being put together, but you'll be shocked to know you're not supposed to wash them ever, maybe once a year, just with a little bit of water, but not in the washing machine. They last forever. There's a whole subculture on salvage denim, and these people that kind of look like they're dressed up like cowboys, but it's a little bit different. And there's a street in Tokyo that really makes almost like 90% of the salvage denim in the world. And it's super stiff when you get it, and you get different levels, but it crafts perfectly to your body and then becomes the most comfortable pair of denim or clothes you've ever had. So salvage denim is really, in the whole subculture, I've really gotten into hardcore.
Oh, well, that's new. I didn't know there was subculture for jean brands, but that's somebody who's figured it out, right?
Yeah, it's a whole, once you look into it, there's a whole world.
Well, we should put that in the show notes for people to learn about salvage denim. Last thing I want to do is 90 seconds, make your best pitch for KIP Search. Pretend people haven't been listening already. Who are you? What do you do? Who should find you? How do they find you?
Great. Yeah. So I'm Kip Knippel, President and CEO of KIP Search. Our website is kipsearch.com, KIP as in Paul, search.com, where you can learn all about us. We are an executive level retained recruiting firm. So we help companies find executive leaders, typically C-level. We have 100% success. We are process driven, and we are focused on you and your business, your culture, your core values, and finding people that will help you catapult your business to the next level, whatever that means for you, but that really fit your culture and core values. And we just want to help you create abundance and impact and do good in the world, through business, through entrepreneurship, through the free market.
Awesome. This has been a great episode. And again, for people who are joining or who've been listening, definitely check Kip out at www.kipsearch.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. It's been great to have you, Kip.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and on social media, it's Kip Knippel on everything, so you can find me there too. Thank you.
And for those listening, thank you for tuning in. We know it's a big commitment of your time to spend 45 minutes with us. We invite you to please like and subscribe so that you follow us and other people will find us. And if you're interested more in what we're up to, we invite you to join our Liberty Business Alliance community by going to libertyspenders.com. Until next time.